as a client analyst at Vanguard. Now she works as an associate at Goldman Sachs. So Tiffany, if you want to say a few words, you can.
Hey y'all. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here. Being a UPIC intern must be a common theme because I also was a UPIC intern as well and worked for the Career Center. So this is near and dear to my heart. But like I said, I'm very excited and I'm certainly no expert on being an adult, but I am happy to offer up any advice that I can. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming and being here again, taking time out of your busy schedules. That's why we're here. Everyone, we all hear the word adulting and what it is, and we're all trying to be out here in the world, just hard in general. So we put this together to kind of give students different perspectives of what adulting means, what it means to each person, how it looks like now that we're in this new era of technology after COVID and stuff like that. So that's why we put this together. So, before we get started in the questions, we do have a little poll for everyone. Just answer in the chat. What is something you've enjoyed in the summer so far? So we'll give people a few minutes to answer that, and then we'll read some of the answers out.
And panelists, you can also kick in if you're having fun. I'm seeing there's lots of water themes going on. Folks are going to the beach, Lake Hartwell, spending time with family. Whitewater rafting, that sounds awesome. Chicago, exclamation point, I love it. The beach. Aerial yoga. Okay, Kenitra, you might have to expand on that. I'm dying to know more.
Yeah, so that one, I guess while everyone's answering, so
Yeah.
I love yoga, but it's just a different type. So basically, like it's silk ropes that are hanging from the
Oh,
ceiling,
yeah.
and you do all the same yoga moves, but it's all in the air. So a lot of like strength and core stuff. So I like yoga. I think I'll be back. My back hurts a little bit after being upside down, but it was fun though.
I feel like I'd get tied up in knots, but I think that's awesome. Let's see, spending time with family, Charleston concerts, Trey, I love it. That's awesome. Thanks everybody for sharing. All right, I'm gonna turn it back over to Cameron. We'll dive in. Y'all can keep dropping in what you're loving in the summer if you want to.
Righty. So with our first question, how this will kind of go is we'll have a question on the screen. I'll also read it out loud. And then we'll have each of the panelists kind of go through answer it if y'all want to. And we can go in whatever type of order you would like. So first question, what was your community/connection friend network like while you were at Clemson? I'll just pick someone to start. Sarah, if you want to go ahead and get started for us, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like Clemson is kind of a bigger school, at least for the other schools in the area, but there's so many smaller networks within the school. That was at least my experience. I was nervous about going to a larger school versus like other smaller schools, but I really feel like I found my place within the smaller built-in networks of the Clemson community. My student ministry was a big part of my friend connection at the university. I was a part of RUF. And my husband and I actually both were and had a lot of friends through there, met our roommates, my lifelong friends I met there, but also just through being involved with student organizations related to my major. So within political science, within scholarship programs, things like that, or just special interest groups. I know I did a lot of stuff with Clemson Hope while I was there. One of my friends actually started Clemson Hope. So we were very involved with that, meeting other students who care about volunteering, contributing back to their community. Things like that are great ways, I think, to meet friends. But also professionally through my UPIC internship, I met, people who I actually now work with. And it's kind of a longer story, I guess, for later on, but through my internship with UPIC, I actually made the connections for my current job now, even though I left Clemson and eventually came back. So that's really how I met people.
Anyone else? Y'all go ahead and chime in.
I can chime in and just kind of piggyback off of that. A lot of like the friends that I made foundationally were from, my freshman year at Clemson. So the people that I lived with, some of their friends that they already knew. And I went through sorority recruitment. So I gained a lot of friends through that experience. And I think my sorority and the people that I made friends with freshman year kind of set me up for the future at Clemson, and even going kind of like with Sarah, going into my career as well, gave me a lot of, networking and the ability to join clubs and find like interests there. So I was part of Students Helping Honduras, which was a great experience for me to kind of volunteer and do that, as well as some of the organizations through my sorority. But also, I was an Aspire facilitator, and I love that experience. I hype that up all day long. And that really gave me an opportunity to connect with other students that maybe I wouldn't have, just through like my sorority and just through classes and things like that. And students that were younger grade wise as well, to kind of get to know them and see how their experiences were going as well. And that kind of set me up for the future of, my time in Charlotte. I knew a couple of people who worked at Vanguard at the time who had gone to Clemson as well. And I think that kind of set me up for the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off that as well. Personally for me, yeah, freshman year was big. A lot of the connections I made in the dorm or just through classes, I followed along throughout my 4 years at Clemson, and then even after. So definitely that's a big thing. Even just like getting involved in things that really paid off long term. I got involved in working orientation, so I was one of the people screaming at freshmen at 8 a.m. in the morning. That was fun. Baptist Collegiate Ministry, gained a lot of friends through there who I still talk to and catch up to. And just kind of professionally too, especially with the makerspace, met a lot of faculty and staff through that. And also I did tour guides at the university for the engineering department. So got a lot of professional networking for that. Worked with a lot of people, follow a lot of people on LinkedIn who I still connect with. And honestly, even right before this, there was a Clemson lunch with just like Clemson alumni that we had at the hub. So the Clemson network is big. And just make sure that you stress those connections and meet as many people as you can, because it really pays off.
I think for me, my experience was kind of opposite, which sounds a little bad. My freshman year, I think for me, coming to Clemson, my sister went there, so I was kind of used to the campus and everything. I think for me, just starting with engineering, it was a lot going on. Chemical engineering was a whole lot, especially because you start your actual chemical engineering classes like your second semester of freshman year. So for me, I was kind of really by myself a lot of that time. I really didn't find my community and my friends really until maybe around the end of my sophomore year, just by going to Parent Wise. Like for me, if you know, most chemical engineers, not very social, they're not super duper friendly. So making friends with only 60 people in my class was not the easiest thing. But I mean, I met a few people through there, but honestly, Parent Wise was kind of like that community. Even though they weren't chemical engineers, a bunch of people were mostly in engineering or STEM. And of course, people that look like me. So I was like, okay, cool. I get to see people that, are familiar faces. They just created a very home-like environment, somewhere where I would go to just kind of study, or if I just needed a snack, or honestly, it was more of a venting space for me. When I had reports that I just didn't want to do, and I wanted to kind of not do them for a while, I would go there, eat snacks, give me some time away from doing everything else. And then eventually I joined a sorority, and then I loved doing all the STEM camps, where they had Girl Scouts would come on campus, and that would kind of be through Parent Wise. So a lot of that kind of helped me form a lot of those relationships and friendships that I had. So a lot of that definitely made a difference. Started doing more research opportunities within my chemical engineering department. So that also helped as well to kind of form that professional network. So for me, it was kind of like I said, freshman year was a little rough, but it got better over the course of time. So a little bit different, but ultimately, like everyone said, Clemson gives you the best area to find your people, find where you fit in, and ultimately it's really a big family.
Definitely will echo that. Y'all all said really good things, especially finding your community. Once you find it, you feel okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I enjoy. This is what I need in order to get through it. Because Clemson is hard. I'm not even going to lie it's not. Clemson is hard. And so being here, whether you're from out of state or in state, it's good to find that community and network to help you get through the times. So perfect. Thank you for everyone for that question. All right, to the next question. So thinking about, of course, you found your Clemson network and kind of your friends because everyone was kind of in close proximity. You had different clubs, organizations, you had Tiger Proud, all these things coming at you at Clemson. But now you're kind of, once you graduate, you're in the quote unquote real world. So what was that transition like for each of you from, coming to Clemson, which is you found, kind of found your family, and now going out to maybe being in a different environment, different state? How was that for y'all? Let's go
Start, I
first.
guess. For me, it was not easy. I think that's the case for a lot of people because you come from, college where at the end of it, you've likely made a lot of friends, a lot of connections. You've kind of found like a comfort in that bubble. And then depending on where you relocate, for me, it wasn't that far. I knew a couple of people there, but I was still like away from most of my family. I was, starting a new career. And granted, my situation was a little bit different because I was a psychology major and I was going into finance. I didn't know what a stock or a bond was, so I was like, what am I doing here? I am not cut out for this. But through a lot of like experiences of, learning what I was doing on the job, studying really hard because the studying, once you get out of college, doesn't always end, unfortunately. You still got to, keep track of licensings or, stay up to date on what's going on in your field. So that doesn't always end. But you find a support system or you keep the support system and maintain that you gained through your time at Clemson. And that makes it a lot easier. I know that like finding a community once you go to that new spot, wherever that is, really is helpful. For me, it was going to church, it was family, and it was trying to not only maintain the friendships that I gained in college, and that takes a lot of effort when you are, either studying or, trying to find your next move, what you're going to do, or really just focusing on your career and making that your main priority. It's not always easy. And then also just like making new friends and being open to putting myself into situations I probably wouldn't if I already had a support system. So, going out to a networking event where you don't know anybody, signing up for it, trying to find like a group activity that you like to do, going to like yoga, for instance, at a new place where you don't know anybody and just trying to introduce yourself makes a world of a difference when you try to put yourself out there.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I think, yeah, definitely what Tiffany said, very true. I feel like my biggest transition in life has been from college to the real world. Things just look different. It's a weird way, but you mature so quickly after you leave. You just have a new set of responsibilities. I had an apartment my last year at Clemson by myself. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely an adult. Like I'm feeling good. I got into the real world. I'm like, hold on, there are more bills, more responsibilities. I gotta go to work every day. Like it's a different level of maturity. Your friendships look different. Like Tiffany was saying, like making time for people, really prioritizing your life, but really just figuring out like how do you combine your work life and still balance like that personal aspect of yourself has been really a hard transition. Like for me, I ended up moving to New York, which I don't know what I was thinking. I came because I wanted to work for Estee Lauder. I thought that was super cool, but didn't have any friends, no family. I think I had a grand aunt that I don't even know who lived maybe in New Jersey. But I moved here because it was a good opportunity and really just figuring out like, how can you create that personal life? So for me, going to the gym, I was like, I'm going to sign up for a gym. I feel like you can always connect with people randomly, like, hey, like what exercise are you doing? I started taking workout classes and going consistently. So it was always Tuesdays and Thursdays. I still even go. And finding those people, really just putting yourself out there, being uncomfortable, talking to people, really made the difference. And you just start trying new things. But honestly, it's just the simple things you don't really realize when you're starting out. I do my grocery shopping on Sundays faithfully. If I don't get my groceries on Sunday, my week is messed up. It's just a lot of things that, once you transition from college, it looks a whole lot different. But ultimately, it's a good transition, but you definitely mature. You look at things a whole lot differently. You're definitely very grateful, like Tiffany said, for that support system. When you do find one and you find really good people, you hold on really tightly because, you kind of really had to start over. You had to figure your whole life out. Moving to New York, they did not have a Publix, and Publix was my go-to store in Clemson. That's where I got all of my fruit. I got everything from them. So it's just the simple things that you learn. But like I said, I figure, I think my biggest jump in terms of maturity has been from college to becoming an adult, and I'm only 25. So
Yeah, I love what you said about, there's so many more bills. I remember getting my job offer senior year and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. And I sat down to build a budget and I was like, oh, it's all gone. Even if you're financially independent in college, like it just hits so different when you move out of the college bubble where, I mean, certain things that I can't even itemize off the top of my head are like built into the college experience to some extent. And I was like, oh, okay. Like that's why my job offer is what it is. It's really not that much. It's gone. Um, but I guess I had kind of a unique experience graduating in 2020. Like everything was shut down. May of 2020, my husband and I actually both graduated and then got married and moved to Chicago. And Chicago was shut down until well after winter of 21, at least to some extent. So it was very hard in the traditional ways to meet people and build community, both professionally and personally. I would say a lot of our initial friendships and connections came from getting involved in a local church. And then my husband was in law school for our 3 years in Chicago. And so we met some friends just through his classmates. But I would say it was very hard to meet people professionally outside of those things. I actually was not working remotely during that time. Unlike most people in Chicago, we were in person at the charter school. But I would say one of the biggest ways I found to get involved too is just, find people who like things that you like. So if you play tennis, like there are USTA leagues everywhere, and that's a great way to meet people. That's how I've met a lot of friends in our current city, our current place. But just get involved with organizations. There are also a lot of professional organizations. I know for me, there's Alliance of Fundraising Professionals, meet people there. But really find a routine. I think it was hard. One of the hardest things was finding a new routine. Because you have some semblance of a routine in college, but it's different every semester or even every week based on different things. You have the same classes for a full semester, but that changes all the time. So I liked what Kenitra said about grocery shopping. I actually do mine on Saturday mornings every week, and it ruins my week if I don't get to do it on Saturday mornings. That's when no one else is at the store and it's calm, and you sacrifice your Saturday morning sleeping in, but you don't want to hurt everyone else who's at the grocery store at 5 p.m. on a Monday after work. So it's hard, and I would say our experience was different having graduated in 2020, but it's doable. You just have to be, like Tiffany was saying, very intentional with building a life for yourself that you enjoy, that allows time for the things that you like, even though so many things are changing.
Okay, personally, this was kind of a dumb one. Everything in Clemson was so much closer. Like having to drive like 10 minutes to the grocery store minimum is just frustrating. So yeah, I took that one for granted. That's been tough. Serious one though is adjusting to the schedule. It's definitely a lot different doing like a 9 to 5 or like weekend flex so you can move it around a little bit. But it's definitely a different transition from having random classes sort of here and there and always feeling like you have to be studying for a test or something's coming up or whatever, to basically like a 9 to 5. And hopefully when you close your laptop, you're done for work. So I know for myself personally, that's been an adjustment. I think it's given me a little bit more time because I typically get on a little earlier and get off at about 3 or so. So it's given me a little bit of time to go to the gym or go to any kind of networking events or stuff like that, or going around in Charleston. So just adjusting to that, and yeah, getting into a schedule of like getting my groceries. Mine's Sunday after church, by the way. Is definitely been an adjustment, but it's just something you just have to be intentional about. I'm gonna piggyback too off the friend thing. It's definitely tougher. There's not as much opportunities as clubs and stuff right in your faces like with Clemson, but there are definitely stuff. If you're intentional, you can find it. Like I know Charleston, we've got a Charleston Young Professionals that does events about every month. Boeing has some stuff that we do every month for people trying to get out in the community, networking, community involvement, volunteering, stuff like that. So just be intentional with that. But you just have to be a little bit patient with it because it will come in time, but it's definitely a transition.
Yes, echo everything that they all said. That routine thing is a big one. Like putting yourself on a routine, having, whether you're, like I said, at work, then you go home and you really don't have anything to do if you're not in a master's program or doing other work. So you're like, I have all this free time. Like, what do I do with myself? So figuring out a routine will definitely help in that transition. And like they said, being intentional about who you go, like who you find to hang out with, what things you're doing, that will definitely help with that transition as well. But I agree that grocery shopping is a big one now. So perfect. Thank y'all for that. So next question, y'all kind of touched on this a little bit, like some of the challenges you faced after graduation, but if y'all, there's anything else y'all would want to say, kind of how you overcome them, or if you're currently experiencing anything now, you can definitely talk about that.
I would say Clemson prepares you. You are going to come out, you're going to know a lot of information, you're going to be smart, people are going to trust you. However, I would say just transitioning into the professional world is different. You have politics, you have just things you have to just naturally learn that you don't really learn from anyone else. You kind of just have to learn, how do you work with different colleagues? How do you work with different personalities? So, I mean, that was definitely a challenge. But I mean, the biggest two things I've learned is, number one, always be nice to people. You're having a bad day, still be nice, still be kind. Second thing would definitely probably be leave work at work. Most of the time, like Trey was saying, I usually do 9 to 5, but Lord have mercy, Monday I worked until like 7, 8 o'clock. So it kind of goes up and down. But once I leave work, I leave it at work, because you have to have that personal time to reset, because unfortunately you don't have like long Christmas breaks all the time. You don't have random breaks throughout the semester and the year that, you randomly get off. Those actually count as vacation days. And for me, I only got less than 2 weeks. So you got to work with it. But most importantly, really having like that mental balance and stability to make sure like whatever's going on at work, because things get really chaotic. And sometimes, for me as an engineer, I take things very personal. I'm like, oh my God, this, experiment didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I take it personal, but I also know that I have to leave whatever happens at work at work. Don't take it personal. Know that you're still learning. I've been doing the same role for almost 3 years. August make 3 years. But I'm still constantly learning. So always just knowing that you're learning, you can learn from other people. Forming those professional relationships have been super helpful for me. So I thought that was really good. But yeah, I think that was one unexpected challenge. And I mean, I think we already talked about bills. Like, I have my Excel sheet, and every single time I do my bills, I'm like, I'm excited to get paid. And then I'm like, I already know where all my money's going at. So being salary it's good, but I think that's something I've also learned, where it's just like, it's good because you're getting the same amount so you can plan, but at the same time, you're only getting the same amount. Like, you can't expect like, oh, I'm going to get something extra, next paycheck. It's kind of like you have that routine. So for me, really setting priorities when it comes to my budget. For me, I did not know how expensive air fresheners were, and I love my apartment to smell good. Oh my God, but they cost $20. Like, that's my budget. So for me, like I said, budgeting has been really a little bit difficult. It has been rocky, because for me, I really like showing my love language can be giving gifts. I love seeing people happy. So for me, like, that's a part of the budget. I have to make sure, like, birthday gifts, graduation, like, those things are super important to me. Including that. And then also just to keep in mind, like, if you are gonna live out of state, just having a travel budget. So really understanding, like, having money set aside. So my bonuses typically go towards my travel budget, because I love seeing my family. And I just want to make sure I'm able to see them. So I budget all that stuff out. So I think those are a few additional challenges.
Yeah, I guess I have two main things kind of building off of what she said. The first one is, it does not matter how many group projects you have in college. It does not prepare you to learn to work with colleagues. I am someone who I pride myself in the ability to work with all different kinds of working styles and personalities and things like that. But you will realize it, even if you are like that at a baseline. I also am someone who can't stand inefficiency in meetings and different things about communication styles that, like, if you hold that line in the workplace, it will make your job miserable. So, I mean, everyone thinks that they can work and adapt to working with other people, but truly there will be a person at your first job who just rubs you the wrong way every single time. And you will come in, you'll sit down with yourself and you'll say, okay, what can I do mentally in my own way that I'm handling this to ease that frustration for myself. And it may work, it may not work, but that was one thing that was really hard for me. Is it's one thing to be able to work with different people, but when you have a deliverable and you're waiting on something from someone else, like I think I'm overly direct. And you need to know that about yourself. Like it's not bad to hold someone else responsible for what you need from them in order for the whole team to move a goal forward. But you will learn different things about yourself that you just, even if it happens in a group project, it's just not the same as when you're all there getting paid by the same manager. It's just, that was kind of funny to me. But the other thing is just that one of the hard parts about transitioning from college for me was that you, for the first time in your life, are not immediately surrounded by a bunch of people your same age, who are in the same season of life as you. I'm sure this is different from industry to industry in terms of your job. I know so many industries bring on a cohort of new grads into like an onboarding ramp up program. I think finance is probably like that in certain ways. Maybe also engineering. My brother's graduating engineering. He's going into a ramp up program. But the industry and the job I took, I was immediately surrounded by people who were a lot older than me. And I like to think I'm pretty smart and okay at my job, but I experienced so much imposter syndrome, just from not wanting to speak up in meetings. If I see where something could be done better, just things like that is really hard. But also just relating and building relationships with people who are from other generations can be a lot harder than you think. But there's real value there. So I think that also kind of goes back to the previous question about, building community. Is we lived in Chicago for 3 years, and when we left, my best friends were all 35 to 40 with big families. And I never would have expected that. But I mean, those are just sweet relationships to me. So challenges, but blessings.
I definitely agree with a lot of what Sarah and Kenitra said. You can't really control who you work with all the time. And one thing I've learned is that complaining can be contagious. So really just trying to enjoy where you're at, even if it can be frustrating or overwhelming or, whatever the situation is, trying to have a mindset of positivity and kindness goes a long way. And then just like a couple of other things that it might just be me personally, but hoping that maybe some other people can relate to this as well. I didn't realize that as soon as I left Clemson and started my new job, that I was always trying to figure out what my next move was instead of just being at peace with where I was in that moment. Like I had just started a new position and now I'm already thinking about what my next position is. Like, what am I going to do next? Am I going to stay in this lane or am I going to try to move laterally somewhere else? I think that's comes with just wanting to be ambitious and very driven and goal oriented, but it's important to remember that you are where you are right now for a reason. There's a lot of things that you have to learn. And even if it's not the ideal position that you envisioned for yourself right out of college, it's a stepping stone to get you where you're supposed to go. So there's so much to learn just from, being in a job that you're like, I'm never going to stay here. I thought the same thing when I started at Vanguard. I was like, I'm just doing this because I know a few people and I like Charlotte and, I think maybe it'll be fun just to see this through for a year or so. I stayed 2 years and I thought I'm going to law school and I'm never going to see finance again. And I'm back in finance. So, God kind of laughs a little bit when you make plans. He's like, you know what? Sorry, sending you back to finance. And honestly, I really enjoy the job that I'm doing right now. And granted, I'm a year in, but it's very rewarding and I've learned so much already. So even if this isn't my final destination, it's preparing me for where I'm supposed to go or where I'm supposed to be, whatever that might entail. And kind of along the same lines of this, I felt, and I still feel this to some degree, I'm still, learning myself, feeling like I'm always behind because I, took 2 years to work somewhere and then I went back to school for 3 years and now I'm back in the working field again. I sometimes have felt that I'm behind looking and comparing to my peers that not where I'm supposed to be financially. You know, I don't know if like Atlanta is the place for me to be. You know, not having like the house, the spouse, the kids, the dogs, cats, if you're a cat person, whatever. I sometimes have felt that like I'm behind when I look like on social media or I catch up with, friends from, different states and whatnot. But everybody has their own path to get where they're going. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer for some people, and that just means that it's probably something even better waiting around the corner for you. So you just got to really just hone in on that and know that, there's peace where you are because you're supposed to be there to get you to where you're supposed to be going, no matter the time frame or how long it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, I think personally for me, the biggest challenge, and people talk about this and all, but it's just the amount of soft skills you learn. Personally, I'm a big believer you learn a lot in the classroom, but there's a lot you won't pick up on until you're actually having to do it or in the job. Skills like networking, working with other people, planning, setting up a meeting, all this kind of stuff that you won't unfortunately learn in the classroom, but just be prepared to, just to hop into new situations, be always willing to learn. I think has really helped me out a lot to kind of get adjusted and get up to speed with kind of the soft skills that the industry is looking for. So yeah, I think during your time at Clemson, like work on stuff like that, like networking, go to career fairs, go to stuff that's not so much classroom oriented, but will help you professionally, will help set you up better for the transition in the long run.
Agreed. Y'all gave some really good like challenges y'all went through, really good advice, keeping that positive mindset, not feeling behind or comparing yourself, comparison is a thief of joy. You're gonna see everything on social media from TikTok, Instagram, people that are our age have, content creators and everyone's doing their own thing, but it's like focus on what you're doing. I can agree with you on Tiffany that kind of after you graduate, they call it the graduation blues. But it's like you graduated and now what? You worked towards this degree for 4+ years, and you're on the stage, you're crossing the stage, and you're like, well, now what is it? I worked this job, and what is the next step? What do I do? So it's good to kind of keep yourself in the present moment, take in what you're learning, take in what you're doing, and you're here for a reason. So obviously you'll get to where you want to go, where you want to be. Perfect. Thank you all. So this is going to be our last question, and then we'll kind of get into any questions that the students may have. You want to put that in the chat, or if you want to unmute your mic, you can after this question. This last question. So reflect on your time at Clemson. What would you have done differently to prepare yourself for like the realities of life after graduation, both professionally, personally, in any aspect of your life? What would you have done differently?
As cliche as it sounds, I don't think I would change anything. A lot of times I think in the moment, I'm like, man, I wish I had done this. Like in terms of personally, I wish I put myself out there more earlier in college. I would have found more friends and, maybe, have more connections and networks. But I mean, personally, I'm just a big believer in whatever you've gone through, it's positioned you to put you wherever you end up. You're going to learn a lesson, whether it's good or bad. So for me, I don't think I would change anything else. For me, I learn along the way. I'm very reflective when it comes to if something doesn't go good, then I'm like, you know what, like, let me take some time, figure out like, what can I do differently? But a lot of times, like I said, Clemson choosing my major, some days I'm like, did I really go through that? But I'm also like, it really forced me to like learn by myself, be able to learn new things, even if I didn't know what it was. Chemical engineering, like you can't really see a lot of the stuff that we learn. So it really forced me to really zone in on what are my learning skills? How can I learn best? So that's a big thing I took from Clemson and applied it to the real world is really just learning new things. But I mean, like I said, I don't think I would change anything. I think whatever I went through, all the tears I had at Clemson after, seeing very low scores, like when I took my first chemical engineering test, it was like, what was it? It was like a 59. I called my mom. I was like, I have never seen a score this low in my life. Like I was in tears. I was crushed. I was just like, I studied for hours. How can I not get a good score? But I mean, I felt like all those trials and tribulations that I went through, like it definitely brought me to a place of really believing in myself, being strong and being, you know, really acknowledging that when things don't always work out, it's usually something bigger that's going to happen that you're supposed to be in. So for me, like I said, a lot of these things prepared me. So even though I was a little bit of a loner at Clemson for the first part, it made me stronger. So when I came to New York and I had no idea about anyone here, then I was like, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to find my people. So yeah, that would probably be my answer.
This is gonna sound so superficial. My biggest college regret is not taking more leisure skills. Because never in your adult life do you have the opportunity to, I mean, I know it's not free because you pay tuition, but like to the extent that you can fit leisure skills on top of your classes, like you can learn tennis, sailing, personal finance, all of these things, pottery on top of your classes. And like once you become an adult, you don't have as much time to learn those things. You don't have a place to learn them, and it costs a lot of money to learn them. So I sometimes wish I had taken more leisure skills just to see, you know, is there a hobby that I have that I've never tried? But more seriously, kind of to piggyback on Tiffany's comment about comparison, I think that starts when you're in college and your friends start getting job offers, or people in your major start branching out and pursuing the more specific, narrow areas within your industry. And you think, oh, should I be pursuing that? That seems like something I might like. And eventually you narrow down and you pick a path for yourself, but then the job offers come rolling in and you hear how much one of your friends is going to be making at their entry-level job. And I think that's something that I would really practice when you're a student. And that's when you can start practicing, you know, being content and happy with what you've chosen and where you've been placed. Because like your first job out of college doesn't really matter. And I think along those same lines, like I'm not in the same job or even the second job that I've had after college. I'm on my third. I've been out of college for 4 years. But I think also being content with, you know, what your personal dreams are. I think in college and right out of college, and this is true for a lot of people for a long time, and there's no right or wrong, but I really thought that I wanted to, within my industry, climb to a certain level and a certain position and then stop. Like I don't have CEO aspirations or anything like that, but you know, I had a certain specific job within my industry that I wanted to work towards. And when we were in Chicago, I actually got the opportunity in my second job to be in that position. It was a frontline fundraising position, raising a lot of money for a college of business in Chicago. And I hated it. And I was so excited when I got the job because I was like, wow, I'm so young. They're really taking a chance on me. And I was okay at it. So it wasn't that, I hated it. And I didn't know the day-to-day of that job when I knew that was what I was shooting for. I realize now, a couple years later, I am happiest when I'm reporting to someone and doing support work. And that's not something that anyone in college would be like, yes, I want to support someone else's career as a career. Like people just don't say that because everyone wants to reach a certain level and a certain level of independence. But I realized in myself over the last couple of years, like I am really happy in this current position, supporting someone else's work. And I'm thriving in this job and I see myself keeping this job for a really long time. So I would say also just as you're comparing to others, just know what you really want and where you thrive, because it might not be the mainstream, oh, climb to the top and keep getting that promotion and keep doing all those things, because you might not like it. So if you get there and you realize you don't like it, there's nothing wrong with pivoting to take a step down in the corporate ladder because it's a job you enjoy more. That's kind of off topic from the question where I landed, but that's something really
No.
big that I've learned, and I think it starts in college.
You're perfectly fine. That's okay.
Yeah, I'll just add like one more thing into that as well. So I think in college, at least from my experience, I felt like I could do like anything. I was like, I can do this, I can do that, like I can be whoever I want to be. And, you know, you don't have, for me at least, my classes were very large, so I didn't have like a great personal relationship with every single professor. But I found that in my times working for the Career Center, working with like Aspire, working in my sorority with like some of the older like alumni and stuff like that. But if I had a closer relationship with some of my professors, I think they probably would have been like, you can do way better in class. Like you can do way better on these exams. Like they probably would have had like those conversations with me. And so because I didn't have them in college, coming to like the real world, like starting a job, like you're not going to be perfect. Like especially like when you first start, you like have no idea what you're doing. Even after the trainings, you know, or the licensing or, you know, whatever it is that you need to do to get to your position. You know, even after you learn all that stuff, like a lot of things are learned on the job and you're going to make mistakes. And I think if I had been better prepared for that, just in general, like receiving negative feedback or making mistakes and not expecting myself to always be on top of it, always being perfect, I think I might have been a little bit better prepared professionally because then I would have had a little bit tougher skin, you know? And that just comes with time and just acceptance that, like, I, the standard isn't perfection. The standard is my best, you know? So if I came prepared and I did everything that I could, then that's a win, you know? So just being, you know, gracious with yourself to some degree when you first start out, I think can make a difference. And then also when you're in college, you have all this time on your hands. You know, granted, you have to go to class at certain times, but you're never going to have more time than you had then or like when you were in high school or like previously. So when you get into the real world, how you spend your time outside of your, you know, 8 to 5 or however many hours it is, just try to make the most of it. So if like your goal is to, stay in shape, making going to the gym a priority, making going for a run a priority. You know, if your goal is to, you know, continue to make friends and, you know, network and what have you, like make time for like, you know, work happy hours or like calling a friend after work, you know, just making time for things that are important to you outside of, you know, your 8 to 5 job is really important because those are going to be the things that make you who you are. And it's a reflection of who you are as a person, the way you spend your time.
I think for me, I'm going to echo Sarah's initial one. I would have taken more leisure skill classes. I took a couple, but the one that stood out, I had a shag class that unfortunately got cut in half by COVID. So that was fun. Would have taken more of those. Yeah, on a more serious note though, I would have been less hard on myself, especially like stress wise around school. Um, GPA is definitely important, and I think it's important when you graduate to have that because really, your first job will ask about it. But to be honest, besides your first job, nobody's really going to ask about it. I'm at the point now. I've taken it all. I've taken that and my graduate GPA off my resume because again, nobody's going to ask about it. So yeah, I think just being not being so stressed out of myself about exams and stuff. Because I had plenty of fun, went to plenty of football games and at the lake and all that. But honestly, there's not a whole lot of time. I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have studied more for that test. You know what I mean? So I think yeah, just being less hard on myself, not always having to get the best grades, and just focusing more on the things that were in front of me is something I probably would have taken more time to do. Yeah.
Y'all, y'all were dropping gems. Those are really good points. Like, I definitely agree with Kenitra on everything happens for a reason. You're in this space, you're in this place, this time for a reason, and you're here because you got to where you are with the work you put in, the time you put in, where you're from, your family, everyone that supported you, you're here for a reason. I agree also with Trey. Don't be so hard on yourself. A lot of the times we don't follow our gut at Clemson because we feel like somebody else is doing this, so I have to do this, or I shouldn't do this. Your gut is there for a reason also, so follow it. But I really do appreciate y'all and y'all's answers, y'all's really good advice on your challenges and how you overcome them. But now we're opening the floor to any questions if any students may have. If you have them, if you want to write them in the chat, if you want to say it out loud, however you feel comfortable, we'll open that floor.
We do have one question that's come in, and maybe just one or two of the panelists could answer this. How did your relationship with like professors or teaching assistants or whatever help you as you prepared for your career after college?
For me, I was still figuring out what I was gonna do with the chemical engineering degree. I did not want to work in oil, gas, all the normal industries. So I kind of started vocalizing that to one of my professors because he would always walk the same exact path from our building to his office. So I would just always walk with him. My relationship with him, it kind of just helped me vocalize, like, what do you want to do? And he would always ask me, like, what are your plans? And I was like, I don't know. But he did give me the opportunity to do research, found out that I hate research, and that's perfectly fine. But I spent a year with him because I really like him and I loved his team. But it gave me a chance to really figure out, like, if I liked research, found out I didn't like it. But I also got like that experience. It was really helpful. Because of course, when you're graduating, like, you know, I had 2 internships under my belt at that point, but also having that research experience in my resume definitely showed commitment. It showed that, you know, I'm trying something outside of just internship. So that definitely helped. So I think that was probably super beneficial. For me, office hours, I will tell you, some professors are very different in office hours. Like, they are nicer. It's like, because you come to them being so vulnerable and like in your weakest moment, because most of the time it's like after an exam, you're like, thought I was going to do good, get disappointing results. But office hours have been super beneficial. I had one physics professor, barely could understand him because he didn't speak like very, very good English, but went to him, he definitely slowed it down. It helped a whole lot. So just building those relationships have been helpful. And honestly, just making sure I pass classes, because I learned a whole lot more in office hours, sometimes more than class itself.
I have 2 things. Number one is from like my freshman and sophomore year. When you're a political science major, there are lots of things you could do within your industry with that degree. And then there are tons of things you can do with a political science degree that aren't related at all, which is kind of my current scenario. But there's a lot of pressure and interest in, especially freshman and sophomore political science students, about law school. Without having a passion for law or really a desire to go to law school, it's just one of the common political science paths. And I think because of that, there's a lot of talk and a lot of interest around that. So your freshman, sophomore year, when you're figuring out, you know, what do you want to do? I had mentioned to a professor, you know, maybe I want to go to law school. And he looked at me and he said, you don't like to read and you don't like to write. So why would you go to law school? And I was like, you know, that's a good question. And after having watched my husband go to law school, who he is actually built to go to law school and be a lawyer, I would have hated it. It's so much reading and writing, and I hate reading and I don't enjoy writing. So he was right. And I'm very grateful for him just being honest and just saying, you know, this is very true of law and you don't enjoy that. So why would you pursue that? The other thing, I guess, is also a piece of advice. If you go to all of the extra events, so if your major is hosting a speaker or a guest lecturer or any kind of visiting person or alumni even, like, go to it, because that is where you will meet people one-on-one. You will meet someone who could turn out to be a random future connection when you're looking for a career shift and you remember, oh, I met this person when I was a student. We connected on LinkedIn. They're a Clemson alum. Maybe I'll reach out to them and see what they think. There was a dinner with some alumni and a visiting person that I was invited to, a couple of students were invited to go to. I really did not want to go. I was stressed out with studying. Not that you should prioritize this over your homework, but I went reluctantly. I was seated at dinner next to the CEO of the Clemson Foundation. At the time, I was kind of interested in a fundraising career and was having trouble finding internships. And he listened to me at that dinner, said, there's someone here you should meet. He introduced me at that dinner to the VP for fundraising at Clemson, who invited me to come to his office the next week, which turned out to be an interview, which got me an internship, which got me my current job, because through that internship, I became good friends with was my manager at the time. And when I needed work, when we were moving from Chicago, I called her, they needed help. And I had no idea that Clemson's development fundraising office existed, except that I went to that dinner and I learned that at that dinner. So that's a very sweet, like, causation, like butterfly effect thing for me, I guess. But I would just go to all of those things, meet people, even if you're busy, because it will, like, ripple effect potentially to years down the road.
All right, that was awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Cameron, for moderating. Thank you to Trey, Tiffany, Sarah, and Kenitra for taking time out of your busy professional schedules to share your words of wisdom. And it's just, I'm really grateful for the wisdom that you have shared with the students who are on the line. And I'm wondering, are all 4 of you on LinkedIn, and would you be willing to be connected with the students who have joined this? Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, I cannot say thank you enough. I'm so grateful for your willingness to share your wisdom and to share honestly with students what that transition is like. And Cameron, thank you for agreeing to be our moderator today. So thank you all. That ends our time together. And again, just some housekeeping. If you are continuing in the professional development certificate program, you can complete your reflection. Once you've completed 4 of these webinars, just make an appointment with us here at the Career Center. We'd be happy to talk to you about any of the topics that were brought up during the summer series that you want us to expand on. And as always, we would love to see you in the center, either virtually or in person. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thanks again, everybody.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank y'all
Bye.
again.
Take care.